Welcome back, everyone. Today, I'm going to dive a little deeper into Dune Awakening's combat, beyond the surface level of how it looks and feels. After having a little more time to digest my experience this past weekend and seeing various feedback from the gaming community, I need to discuss combat. So I'm going to break down and explain some of those concepts of Dune's combat today and how they do and don't work with each other. Now, the rest of the world got to see some of the PvP combat as well, as a promotional event showcased some of Funcom's combat system. Now, Funcom has promised to set a new benchmark for survival combat, but after the beta, it's clear they've got a little bit more work to do before launch. So grab a seat, because today I'm going to discuss how combat works in Dune Awakening as of now and break down everything wrong with it. So let's get started. So what's the issue? Right now, everything in this game runs through stamina. It's a catch-all. If you run out of stamina, you are able to be stun-locked and then you are dead. Now, the devs did claim this issue will be fixed, but there's still a lot of defenders of the combat on Reddit saying things like, this is just a skill issue, and Summit just needed to stand still and regenerate stamina so he could just dash out of his attacks. Other Redditors would insinuate he deserved to die because he should have drank water before the fight. Meanwhile, on the other side, we have a strategic mastermind, alpha gamer Tyler 1, executing masterful combos of left-clicking on his enemy while the game is actively alerting him to being dehydrated, despite his light attacks using absolutely no stamina. Now, is being hydrated important in Dune? Yeah, absolutely. It affects your max stam here. Would it have saved him from dying here, though? No. I'm going to dive into the combat a bit more and explain why the critics or defenders of Dune Awakening may be right or wrong in their analysis. And I think it's worth noting early on here that I do plan on playing Dune Awakening on release. I'm excited to do so as well, and I'm not being paid to say that, but Dune's just a pretty unique genre experience. It's a large-scale survival, supposed to have PvP and vehicles. I'm excited to explore it as it unfolds in June because I also just play anything that's MMO related. And I was truly sold on the Deep Desert pretty early on. Kind of turns it into a PlanetSide-esque type experience, but in a Dune wrap is what I had in mind. But being excited for MMOs in 2025 really means I'm just a sucker for potential train wrecks, it seems. So let's just hop into today's topic here. Stamina and power management. Stamina is used for every single active skill in the game currently. There is no other resource for skills used, or techniques. Stamina is consumed when climbing, dodging, or blocking as well. Stamina is not used when sprinting, meleeing in any way, whether you're doing light attacks, heavy attacks, or lunging. You use no stamina for these. Stamina regeneration has a delay before it'll start to regenerate. 2 full seconds. And in combat, 2 seconds is a long time. It will be delayed or stopped if you use any skill, sprint, climb, melee, block, dodge, even shooting a ranged weapon, or very importantly, just taking damage. The only thing you can do to regenerate stamina is stand still and or walk. You can reload your weapon, you can hop in a vehicle, or bandage yourself. Another issue with stamina is there are many ways to be staggered in this game. Any melee attack, a lot of weapons, various skills, they all stagger you. If you want to avoid being put into a melee stun lock, you would have to dodge, which uses stamina. This will boil things down to a lot of difficult stamina management. Now, outside of stamina, we have shields. Shields are managed by your total power and power regeneration. These values will go up rapidly every time you upgrade your power pack. If your power pack equals your combatant's weapon levels, that's to say if you're using an iron level power pack and they're using an iron level rifle, then most weapons are useless outside of shield breaking weapons, such as the Disruptor. Power does not have a window to begin regeneration like stamina does. It will instantly begin regenerating after use. It is only used when your Holtzman shield takes damage, or you use your suspensor belt. You cannot take damage from any ranged weapons or grenades while your shield is up, or the poison and bleed effects that are attached to unique weapons. However, poison and bleeds do go through shields from your skills. When your shields are up, you essentially cannot take damage from anything except a melee heavy attack, poisons and bleeds from skills, and fall damage from, say, a gravity mine. All in all, power is much easier to manage. Your shields will stay up unless a shield-breaking weapon is used, at which point you will be staggered as well. Shroud was killing people earlier in this clip because of the weapon he was using, the Tapper. Its damage was actually incredibly high given the armor tech they were using. They had iron and steel level shields and armor, and iron or steel level Karpov would do very little damage, while his unique Karpov he had access to had damage closer to a door aluminum weapon. Therefore, the shields were breaking quickly due to him using such a high-level weapon compared to their defenses. So this doesn't accurately represent what a Karpov would do to a shielded enemy, and Disruptor, their range is limited. Other mechanics to note with this shield is that your shield will need to regenerate to maximum before you can again activate your Holtzman shield, which leaves you exposed when it is broken by something like a Disruptor. Your Holtzman shield will also drop for half a second every time you fire your weapon. It's a very brief window, but it does leave you exposed for a short moment. Ultimately, power is much more forgiving than stamina and simpler to manage. So all in all, stamina use and regeneration shouldn't be easy or infinite, but it feels crippling and more important than anything after doing some combat testing. We are only testing characters early on in the game as well, but it's worth mentioning we will continue to upgrade our power pool and size and regeneration rate through tool upgrades. Our stamina, however, doesn't upgrade outside of some skills and Swordmaster, which are going to feel extremely mandatory after any bit of combat to any players. To give you an idea, a base character's stamina that is dehydrated, like the clip Summit was in, is 100. It's 125 if you are hydrated to the first level, and 150 at the second level or max hydration. A single dodge costs 45 stamina, meaning you can dodge twice, and then your next dodge will put you in the hole if you're dehydrated. There is no gear that will increase this number either from what I've seen. The skills that add stamina are limited. Swordmaster has 2 skills. With a point in each of them and max hydration, I moved from a maximum of 150 stamina to 190. That's a pretty big leap, and maxing these skills will put us at around 220 max stam potential at end game. Now that's about it, and not much of a jump. The only saving grace in stamina is parries do increase your stamina while simultaneously reducing theirs. This is a huge swing, and one component of counterplay I love in the game right now. There's a lot more info to go into here, but I'll save this probably for a separate video discussing combat and how you should maybe approach it. But that is really it for stamina management from a high level, outside of modifiers such as heavy armor increasing your dodge cost and light armors reducing them. There's definitely a learn to play issue up front with managing your stamina in Dune Awakening, but anyone telling you the combat feels fine from a stamina perspective probably hasn't engaged in any PvP combat or isn't being completely honest. Many effects cause staggers. There's no cooldown on being staggered, and you'll have to learn just when to dodge and when to just let those staggers play out. People that play reactively by default or naturally will bury their stamina quickly. Ultimately, you have to slow yourself in a sense and play a stamina game with your opponent. Let's talk about the problems with this concept. First up, we have the Holtzman shield mechanics. In the Dune universe, shields are iconic. They block fast-moving projectiles like bullets, but let slow blades pass through them, which is why melee combat is supposed to be king in Dune. Funcom leaned pretty hard into this lore, and I respect the commitment, but in practice, it's a bit shaky. When you or an enemy fire a gun, your shield deactivates. This means range combat becomes kind of a strange game sometimes of you can wait for your opponent to shoot first, letting their shield drop, and then reactively shooting them. It's not dynamic. It's kind of a sluggish, counterintuitive concept, especially for players that are used to fast-paced shooters. If you don't know Dune's rules going in, you're going to be confused why your bullets aren't doing anything. And even when you do get it, it feels like the game's punishing you for wanting to shoot. But there are generally two options from the list of weapons that are intended to counter Holtzman shields. The automatic weapon, which we did see in the beta test called the Disruptor, and a medium-range shotgun, the drill shot, comes later in the tech tree we did not see. Everything else appears intended to just bounce off shields, and when tech levels are equal, it appears it's not a great strategy to pour ammo into your enemy. The only way this could be helpful is to perhaps stagger them and to burn their shields by having multiple people shoot someone at the same time. But this is essentially zerging someone down, and this could be done in frankly any manner in this game, whether it's through ranged or melee. The shield mechanic's great for the lore aspect, but currently power regenerates too rapidly and seems to invalidate a majority of the weapon options. Why would I carry around a Mala pistol or a Karpov rifle? The shield system then makes melee feel mandatory against shielded enemies, but here is the kicker. Melee combat is not that enjoyable right now, not enough to carry the weight, which brings us to our next point. The melee combat in Dune Awakening. The beta showed us that melee combat is quite rough right now, and in PvP it struggles to have any consistency with poor netcode. In PvE, melee wasn't too bad once you got used to it, but this game's netcode issues were really exposed once I opened up PvP testing, and melee has its own issues outside of desynced visuals on screen. I swear I haven't heard the word janky used so much since this beta weekend, but it sums up a lot of the experience of using melee in the game. Can also deal with and tolerate a bit of jankiness in a game and didn't really mind it so much in PvE, but stun locking was present in PvP for everyone to see. Now the developers noted that this was a thing they assured the community it's already fixed on the internal client. I definitely say this is already fixed too in their shoes, but with developers live on the stream, they didn't take the opportunity to explain how or why this is fixed and why this issue was even present in the beta client. It'd go a lot further to understand how or why this is fixed on the upcoming live version, because something must be changed that's essential to combat. It could be light attacks costing stamina, or stagger lock immunity, which obviously it's not going to be because there's plenty of ways to get stagger spammed in this game, which is another issue altogether we're not even going to get into. The thing to understand for combat development in video games is every fix opens up other potential combat issues. But the long and short of it is, I was disheartened to see the devs did not explain this more. It leaves defenders of this game wide open to looking like they're just on some heavy-duty copium. The devs used this opportunity instead to enjoy Tyler's laughing, and while the moment was indeed humorous for us as viewers, the developers and ownership at Funcom should be doing more to assure the audience that this is a one-off and why. You guys do understand that this build was greenlit for public testing. You understand these streamers were paid, hired for a sponsored event. And these are top tier category streamers for sponsorships that are not cheap. They were set up to do PvP, and this is the client that they chose to have them use. On top of this, Funcom failed to disclose this is an issue, and it took less than 5 minutes for things to devolve into this. There's a real lack of management and assurance on this situation, and as someone who is interested in this game, genuinely, this is a terrible series of events to unfold, and people just coping on this, saying, don't worry, it's fine on the internal client. At some point, this client with this issue was the internal client, and that was greenlit. If you're telling yourself everything is fine, you're being naive. I do not expect a bug-free combat at release, but this could have been handled better at multiple phases. All in all, Melee had some big struggles with responsiveness in a short period of doing PvP. Sometimes you dodged through somebody to stab them, but you went through them, and now they're behind you. Speaking of people behind you, targeting with multiple opponents was difficult with a soft lock mechanic that didn't have an easy way to swap. All in all, being outnumbered in any situation is nightmare juice in this game for stagger lock and the inability to defend yourself. This is a section we could beat a dead horse on, and we really don't need to. It's undoubtedly an issue Dune Awakening will be grappling with post-launch, and I really do hope for things to improve. I question the vision of combat as a whole when I see Melee unfold though, and it's where we need more communication and explanation from developers other than it's fine in a place that isn't here that you're not seeing right now. What is it supposed to be, Chief, and what are you doing to get us there? That is what I want to hear about. So in total with Melee, there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of things to work on. I think the netcode is not talked about enough. It is a serious issue because the desync causes things to be unreliable. What I do love is they have a level of counterplay where if you block parry somebody successfully, you gain something like 30 stam, they lose something like 40 stam. This completely flips a fight, and even in the case of being outnumbered, could be something useful there. It's a way to defend yourself. The problem is, what if you try to do it and it fails because the netcode is just trash? Real big issue, needs to be fixed, needs to be addressed. Otherwise, Melee will be a nightmare and you will just rely on whipping out a disruptor, backpedaling and unloading a full magazine, breaking their shields, which causes a stagger and opens them up. Which brings us to our next point, our ranged combat. Now, if Melee is a mess, ranged combat is definitely better, but a bit limited, I feel. If you aren't using a disruptor to break shields, you're not doing anything with a ranged weapon, in PvP at least. The other options, they were simply out. I saw some video of somebody on YouTube today going through a sniper build for 10 minutes, while they failed to mention at any point in the video if the person on the other end of the computer pressed H on their keyboard to activate their Holtzman shield, their entire 10-minute video would have been countered as 0 damage would be incoming. Sniper rifles are just simply out. You either have disruptor or you have the drill shot to break shields. Now, ranged combat in PvE is fine for me. You have different tools, different enemies, and they all don't have shields. It's in PvP. If someone doesn't have a shield on and you do, the fight, comparatively speaking, is irrelevant. It's over before it begins. It's not worth talking about. Therefore, you eliminate all these options for weapon types and styles of play. This really comes down to shields again and the power feeling too simplified and shields regenerating too easily. Even if these issues were addressed though, they pale in comparison to the disruptor weapon, which is made directly to counter shields. Therefore, Funcom has sort of boxed themselves into a corner following the lore as far as the relationship between ranged and shield gameplay unfolds beyond PvE. Some of these problems on their sponsored stream were present, as people weren't taking damage at certain times. It's not the best representation of ranged combat, as they did use unique blueprint weapons that were outperforming the shields for some of the players. All in all, you're better off closing the gap and burning shields with one of the other two weapons and then killing your target, or meleeing them down after winning a stam battle. All in all, for ranged weapons, it just feels like a simplified formula, except for PvE where it feels a bit fine. Although honestly, I will probably defer to the shotgun for the damage potential it can do, and the AI not being that smart, not that responsive, not that quick. They're just kind of sitting there sometimes, waiting for you to execute them, it feels like. As far as PvP goes though, it seems like we have the shield breaking weapons and all the other stuff's kind of irrelevant unless it may cause a stagger effect on like the chain gun, which is really just going to stagger somebody so someone else can come in there and kill them while you're stagger locking them. Not really the healthiest thing. It's really going to be using your ranged weapons in conjunction with skills that would disable them, which again just leads to you using something like Disruptor, where you could use Compel to bring an enemy in, unload a whole magazine of the Disruptor to break his shields, and then shotgun him in the head, and it's all over. This leads us to the final section to discuss for combat, which is class skills. So we got Swordmaster, Trooper, Benny G, and Mentat. And the beta gave us a good taste of these. The ideas feel pretty good. Each class has a pretty solidified role and direction, but some of the skills just feel flat out bad. For starters, everyone's going to be using Shigiwire. This is a pretty big issue, but it's just too good for movement. And it can also stagger. It doesn't ever miss like some skills do on targeting. This skill is so incredibly useful, it should likely be built into a tool so you can slot something more interesting for more build variants. Now for PvE, there's various options. Most people won't encounter issues with a lot of the skills in there. Some are definitely better than others, but some skills are absolutely awful. It's a bit concerning for me this close to launch. I mean, if you want a skill that stun locks yourself while stunning your enemy in a very long animation that doesn't allow you to follow up with anything meaningful, look no further than Prana Bindu Strikes. I just don't get it when you have something like this compared to something like Compel, which can hit a target farther away, draw them in, and actually idle them for a long period of time. Speaking of which, Bene Gesserit was incredibly powerful for PvP as well. It pretty much lined up instant kill combos. But don't worry, you can get that Mentat passive that resists the voice to avoid this issue. It will drain a large portion of your stamina and put their skill on a 1-second cooldown. This means I could spam the voice skills to burn someone's stamina so fast, which makes this Mentat passive actually counterproductive. Although, despite the reality, if you didn't resist the voice and got pulled in, you could automatically be killed with no ability to dodge what comes next. Now I know, this is also fixed on the internal client too, right? I don't want to offend anyone over at Funcom, but as someone that really enjoys diving into the combat of skills in games, things like this really bother me because I feel like whoever's designing a concept like this is not even testing what they're doing. Some skills can't actually be dodged, and conversely, some skills targeting is so bad that you'll have little chance to even hit them. This creates extremely binary and gimmicky gameplay. It frustrates me that I have to point this out because these sort of things should be caught so early in the design phase that they never even make it near a client that's shipped to any environment. These sort of glaring issues are part of what concerns me the most for the future of Dune Awakening. There is a lot to love in this game, but the combat is feeling like an afterthought right now. I can see where they spent tens of millions that were put into parts of this game, like creating an actual beautiful environment that really does pay homage to the Dune IP. The music is absolutely amazing. Like, yeah, I actually appreciate good music in games, and the soundtrack they have kicks ass right now. The vertical environments that they've put together, phenomenal. All right, this is all multiplayer too. I get to experience this with my friends. We get to ride around in different vehicles. We get to work together. This is great. I'll even forgive, again, the jankiness, whatever, in the world and the environment. It's very unique what they have there. But when you actually start trying out the combat, it feels like the millions of dollars are stripped away and the combat budget is something closer to your lunch money fund. But I digress. I'd like to talk shortly about the Deep Desert. I think it's worth mentioning the PvP is the endgame, and the beta didn't give us too much PvP, because there's only small pockets of it in Haga Basin, allowing PvP action at shipwrecks. There's very little incentive to visit these shipwrecks as well, and given the shard system design, you are very likely never going to encounter people, maybe a couple times, all the way through leveling up. Therefore, for actual PvP combat, when Dune Awakening is live, you're primarily just going to see it in the Deep Desert. Now, the Deep Desert, where most PvP will happen, was not accessible in the beta, so we can't really judge the full scope of how things are going to be. This is absolutely a bit concerning, and I was hoping by now we'd see something a bit more before release on this to really generate some more excitement and hype. After seeing a lot of these various issues though, I think it may appear obvious why we're not seeing some of the Deep Desert in any of the public testing or on the advertising. The Deep Desert is going to be massive, and I'm a bit concerned about Zergs dominating this place, or the environment being so large that you simply don't encounter people. Neither of these should be the intended long-term outlook for the Deep Desert. But once you've learned the mechanics of stamina and you have numbers to your advantage, combat may be simple and frustrating and less about skill expression and more about the numbers not adding up anymore. As I mentioned earlier, Funcom did say they wanted to set a new benchmark for survival combat. But if you've made it this far in the video, you might be wondering what benchmark they're talking about. The beta's combat was at odds with the game's strengths, which are exploration, the base building, the immersive Dune aesthetic. When you're running from a sandworm, crafting, riding new vehicles, the game honestly shines. But the moment you draw out your weapon, god damn, it stumbles. These are not just me going out of my way to nitpick combat. Combat is a core pillar of survival MMO gaming. And right now, it's unfortunately its weakest link. So is there hope? Well, They've got less than a month until launch, and they've already delayed the game once to polish it. While the netcode doesn't look like it's getting improved or fixed anytime soon, they could work on balancing out skills to make sense and reworking some of the stamina and power relationship. But these are all real issues and concerns that don't stop me from playing Dune, but have altered my expectations. I'm actually interested to hear thoughts of people on various sides, as Dune Awakening is clearly attracting people from the PvE and the PvP side. There are people that don't care about these problems on the PvE side from what I've seen on Reddit, and people excited for the deep desert experience on the PvP side like myself, and then there's plenty somewhere in between. I fear that they may deliver a world that has shortcomings for PvPers in execution for the endgame combat, and a lack of PvE environment for those in the later game, unless PvP all but dies out. It's in everyone's best interest though that it provides an environment for both parties and has a healthy world where they lean on each other. But perhaps that's a discussion for another video. Make sure you like and subscribe this video. Give me your thoughts down below on what you think of combat, what else you'd like to see that I might have discussed in this video in more detail. I look forward to bringing you more info on Dune Awakening up through launch, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.